Hello and welcome to the Writ's first of what will hopefully be an annual over-under competition between myself, Eric Renier, and Philippe J. Fournier of 338canada.com. In this competition, we will try to predict the politics of 2022. Hey, Philippe, happy holidays.
Bonjour, Eric, my friend. It's great to talk to you again.
How has 2021 been for you?
You know what? Considering the federal election and how it went, the results and the projections, I think it was a really great year. Although I have to say, in your introduction, you said this was a competition. I'm not sure I was ready for a competition, but all right, let's bring it on.
Friendly competition. The only thing that we're fighting over are the stakes, are the bragging rights. So we actually did this during the federal election, if you remember. We did a little bit of a competition. Not maybe it wasn't a competition. Maybe I'm overselling what we were doing at the time. But I did go back to see how we actually did. If you remember,
I have to say, I don't remember much of this. I remember I said the lines, but did we do well? I don't remember.
Well, we'll go through it. I'll actually go through it so
Okay.
We can see how we did. So the first one that you did, you set the over under for the People's Party of Canada, how many votes they get at 1 million. And do you remember what you said?
I think I said under, but it would be close. Did I say that?
Yeah, we both did the under, and in the end, it was 841,000 votes. So we each got a point for that. Then the next one we did was the over under at one Liberal seat in Alberta. And we both took the over, and they had 2 seats, Edmonton Centre and Calgary Skyview. So we both got a point for that. And then this one was turned out to be a pretty interesting one. It was 32.5 seats for the Bloc Québécois. We both chose the under because I think at the time they weren't doing as well in the polls. And of course, they ended up with 32 seats.
So I have to say, though, that was a perfect line.
It was.
I mean, the line was perfect, right? So I take some consolation in there.
Yeah. So then we did one that was 10.5 Quebec Conservative seats. And this was actually the first time that we disagreed. Now, do you know what you said?
10.5, they ended up with 10. I'm pretty sure I said over because I had Trois-Rivières going to the Conservatives and they lost it by 100 votes. So you said under, right?
I did. So I got the point for that one. And
good for you.
Then we did 9.5 NDP seats in Ontario. And this was again where we took different ones. I took the over, you took the under. They only got 5 seats. So that shows that the line there was a little bit too generous, I think.
Yes. I still, but you still took the bait though. But that line was quite high. But then again, the NDP underperforming in Ontario. What else is new?
Yeah, and then there was 2 green seats. I remember we discussed this because usually we put 2.5 or 1 that kind of thing. So we said what was more likely 1 seat or 3. You took the over. I took the under. In the end, they got 2 seats, so neither of us got a point for that. And then the last one, which was an interesting one now when you're thinking about things, we said the over-under of how many leaders would resign by the end of the year. And I'll say the end of the year is now. We had 1.5 as the line. We both took the over. And it's not been the over. It's been the under. It's only been Annamie Paul.
That's it, huh? Well, I think we figured that the Conservative leader, if should he lose, we figured either the Liberals or the Conservatives, if they lost, the leader would be gone, and it didn't happen. Oh, okay, that's interesting.
So in the end, we tied.
Yeah, we did pretty well.
But we tied.
Wow.
So this will be the tiebreaker for the year, I guess. We'll figure out it. We'll find out at the end of the year how we did. So just to lay out the rules, it's very simple. We set a number and a political event or question and have to choose either the over or the under, and hopefully, if a meteor doesn't hit the Earth, we can return again next year and see how we did. And one of us can vote and the other person will not. So we're going to do the Ontario provincial election. We're going to do the Quebec election. We're going to do other provincial politics, federal politics, and then sort of a grab bag random one at the end of this. So we will start with the Ontario election, which is in June. So it's not very far away. Now I'll start and then you can go afterwards, Philippe, but I'm going to set the first over under for the share of the vote that the Ontario Progressive Conservatives get. I'm putting the over under at 35.4, which is what Tim Hudak did in 2011. What do you think?
35.4. You know what? Right now, it's a good line, I have to say, because a good line means that it's hard to pick. My projection has them at 35 right now. I'm very tempted to go with the over. I know that Doug Ford is getting a lot of criticism from his opponents, but his aura doesn't seem to have faded much with his base. So 35.4, I will go over. What about you?
I think I'm going to also take the over. I know that's not a fun way to start, but I think the only polls that we've seen so far, that the worst ones have had them at maybe 32, 33. And that feels more like a between election kind of number. And then as the campaign unfolds, they'll go up a little bit. Some of the other, one of the opposition parties might pick up a bit and the others will probably drop. But I think I'm going to take the over as well. But if they ended up just below 35 and still ended up winning, that wouldn't shock me, I don't think, very much.
However, Eric, you would know this more than I, but if we go back in the elections in this century, the Ontario PC has a very high floor, right? It doesn't go under 31 or 32. Am I wrong about this?
No, that's exactly right. And it's even the same thing for the federal Conservatives. They haven't gone that low either. So there is a very narrow band for the PCs. And it just depends on what the other parties do. That's
interesting. Okay, so over 35. That's good. Yeah.
All right. So what do you got?
Well, it's a kind of an over-under. I decided to put a twist on it. I know it's my first one, but it's similar to over-under, but it's true or false and why.
Oh, okay.
The Ontario Liberal Party becomes the official opposition at Queen's Park after June 2nd. What say you?
Oh boy.
Well, that's the reaction I was looking for.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at where the polls have been, you would think that the Liberals should end up in second place, but that's a big lift to go from 7 seats to at least probably 30, 35. I think that I'm not sure that the numbers I've seen for Stephen Del Duca suggest that he's really going to connect with a lot of people. People don't really know who he is, and of the people who do, they don't generally have a good view of him. So I'm going to say that as the campaign kind of unfolds, the Liberals kind of fall back and the NDP moves forward. Do they beat the PCs? That I don't know. Hopefully that's not a true and false you have later. But so I guess I will say false. They will not form the official opposition.
Which is interesting.
But also, wait. If they win, do I still get a point?
You get a point because you had false. That's the fun part. If, let's say, the Ontario Liberal Party catches fire and Del Duca ends up being a great speaker and orator, which he hasn't shown so far, but we never know, right? Maybe he's a great campaigner. And if they win, well, you were right. I will say true. I think the NDP has not, right now, during this pandemic, it's really hard to sell fiscal conservatism because we actually need to pull together to go through this pandemic. And I'm not saying that conservative politics are bad in the pandemic. It's just that they're much, much harder to sell. And the NDP has not been able to capitalize on this. I haven't seen one poll since the pandemic began in March 2020 where the NDP has been leading. They're always second or sometimes third. So why would that change during a campaign? I mean, Andrea Horwath did an okay campaign in 2018, but it was more of the Liberals collapsing than her rising, I think. It's my interpretation. So I say that the Ontario Liberals, finished second. For the record, it's not part of the bet, but I think the PCs will win and the Ontario Liberals will be the official opposition. So I say true.
All right. Well, there we go. Our first point of contention. Okay. So the next one I'm going to have, I wrote a couple ones just to make sure in case we didn't have, the same ones, but I'm going to do this one. So the over under 2.5 parties that get more than 25% of the vote. Oh. Now, this hasn't actually happened in Ontario. I went back since 1977. So while the polls right now are showing the 3 parties somewhere in the 25 to 35 mark, in all the campaigns since 1977, at least one of the parties ends up falling below 25%. So 2.5, do you think it'll be all 3 or will it just be a 2-horse race?
That's interesting. Do you remember the popular vote in the Bob Ray election? Or close to?
It was the PCs, I think, dropped down to somewhere in the low 20s. So,
really? Huh?
Yeah.
Wow,
so
okay.
that was a bad election for them. But yeah, there was a couple of them where it was pretty close, 23, 24, the third place party. But it's been a while since all 3.
That's a good one, Eric. So 2.5 parties with at least 25% of the popular vote. Well, there was going to be at least two, but the third one, will the Ontario NDP and the Ontario Liberals really split down the middle, or will the anti-Ford vote coalesce? That's the question. I will go under. I think only two parties will reach 25%, but I could really see a scenario where it's over. It's going to be three if it's over, of course. But yeah, I will say the under. What about you?
I'll just, to be different, I mean, the historical precedent would say it should be the under, but I'll do the over. And the reason I'll say that is that, back in 2018, the Liberals were really weak under Kathleen Wynne, so it allowed that non-PC vote to coalesce behind the NDP. I think that Stephen Del Duca will run a better campaign than Kathleen Wynne did, but it's still not necessarily good enough that all the NDP is going to go behind him. So that ends up with all three parties somewhere over 25%, which would be probably good news for Doug Ford. But if it is a minority government, who knows if Andrew Horwath and Stephen Del Duca will keep Doug Ford in power. So it might not necessarily still end up with a PC win, but we're talking about elections. We're not talking about politics.
But your first line was the Ontario PC at 35%. If they don't get there, let's say they get to 33 or 34%. Yeah, I could see an almost three-way split in Ontario, which would make those seat projections completely hell to project. It's going to be that would be a lot of fun. I mean, Ontario politics has not been very interesting for me for a long time. Maybe it's me, but since 2018, I don't know. This election is going to be compelling, I think.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. The compelling elections are a lot more fun. Ontario politics, it's usually not the most exciting. It's not Quebec, it's not Alberta, but well, it'll be the focus in June, that's for sure. All right,
Quebec
what do you got?
could be boring this year, but Quebec could be very boring this year. But okay, all right. There are hang on, I have it here. Okay, maybe this one is a bit easy, but I still want to try it. The Ontario Greens. They have wealth. They should keep wealth unless there's a big surprise. However, they have now a federal Green MP in Kitchener. And I think the Ontario Greens will try to push for it. So I will say this, 1.5 is the line for the number of Greens in Ontario in this election. What say you?
I'll take the under. I think it's going to be tough for them to win Kitchener Centre. I think the only reason they won Kitchener Centre, Mike Morris seems to be, a very lovely guy, but I think that the only reason they won is because the Liberal candidate dropped out. The campaign was such a disaster that I don't see how they would have won that seat. So I'm going to say that the Ontario Greens get reelected in Guelph, but I have a lot of trouble seeing them winning a second seat. Maybe they finish second and then they can build on that next time, but I don't think they win it this time.
I agree. No, I thought I could catch you there on a. Okay, yeah, I agree. I think one seat, but the Greens cannot have a worse year next year than it was this year. They can only go up. I think maybe I'm naive, but I think with a new federal leader, perhaps a renewed campaign that could help the Greens. But I will also say that they will only win one, so I'll take the under.
Okay. All right. Well, then that's it for Ontario politics, unless you have a really good one that you want to also do. But
do you think the PCs will win?
I think, there hasn't been there's only been 3 single-term governments in Ontario. There was the first one. There was the United Farmers after the First World War, and there was Bob Rae. So since pretty much the last 100 years, the only single-term government was the NDP in 1990-95. So I think the PCs probably get their second go, especially with the Liberals being in office in Ottawa. There's that, back and forth that happens.
Colors, huh? Yeah.
So I think that they probably still win, but but the thing is, like I said before, I don't know if they get reduced to a minority, and then I don't know what happens.
If the PCs fail to get a majority, let's say they win 55 seats, then it's going to be a game of strategy between the Liberals and the NDP, saying who's gonna blink first, because as you know, there's a lot of animosity between those two parties. Yet, will they dislike Doug Ford enough to unseat him and try to have a coalition, Coalitions are always a risky business. I have the PCs winning because, if the pandemic and if the handling of the pandemic has not sunk them yet, nothing this spring will. But again, perhaps I'll be wrong. You and I are numbers people, so we focus on our numbers. But sometimes, you look at the trends and you go like, hey, what will be able to beat the PCs? I'm not sure. So okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and if we just go back in the history for Ontario, the Liberals got 5 years in government with the support of the NDP, not for the entire time, but for the first go between 85 and 90. And then the NDP was able to turn that into a big win in 1990. So, maybe they have the same thinking that whoever gets in will get a chance next time. But generally, the junior partner in a coalition does not do very well. So, all right, let's move on to Quebec. So Quebec is in October, and the latest polls do show that it's really going to be hard for the CAQ to lose this thing, but that doesn't mean there's still going to be a lot at stake, at least for the other parties, some of them for maybe their survival. So Philippe, since you're in Quebec, I'm in Ottawa, why don't you start with the first over-under for Quebec?
Let's be realistic here. The CAQ, if let's say in a year the CAQ is not in power, it will have been one of the greatest collapse in Canadian history. I mean, we haven't seen a party dominate that much for so long during a first mandate and then let it slip away. So there's very little doubt in my mind that the CAQ will win. So let's focus on the other parties. Although I have one for the CAQ, but I'll keep it for the end. Okay, so the latest projection that I have has the Liberals at 17 seats, Quebec Solidaire at 8 seats, and the Parti Québécois at 3 seats only. But the Parti Québécois is resilient. They have a lot of members. They're still sitting on a very strong base of sovereigntist Quebecers. About maybe between a quarter and a third of Quebecers say they're sovereigntist. And so I will set the line at the number of PQ seats in the election. And the line may be a bit low, but I will set it at 5.5. 5.5 seats for the Parti Québécois. They have 9 right now. They won 10 in the last election. They lost 1, became an independent. So what say you at 5.5 seats for the Parti Québécois?
That seems like that's a tough one. Okay, look, they can win the seats that they have in the Gaspé. They have Gaspé, Matane, Matapédia, Île-de-Madeleine. Maybe they can win Bonaventure. They have a new candidate there that they seemed excited about. And then there's the seats in the Côte-Nord. Maybe they can win. But that to get to 6, I don't know. That seems complicated. They need to hold the seat or 2 that they won in they need to win Joliette again. They would need to win Marie-Victorin. We'll see if they even hold it in the by-election. I'm going to take the under. Under. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be 1 or 2 seats, but I do think they're going to struggle here because the CAQ is just gobbling up their vote. And I think that the first past vote system's pretty cruel. Maybe they end up at 3 or 4, maybe 5, but I'm going to take the under.
There was a poll in October that had the PQ at 11%, and I think the CAQ was at 49%. And when you had the complete breakdown in the by region and by age, you could see that really the CAQ was eating up former PQ votes. And so the projection that I had was 1 seat, and that was Matane-Matapédia, Pascal Bérubé, a very popular local MP. But it's gone a bit soft, and of course the CAQ had a tough fall. They had a lot of criticism, and they seemed arrogant, and Quebecers do not like that usually. I think voters in general do not like that. And so right now I have 3 seats on average for the Parti Québécois, but they did bring in some very interesting candidates. And so the seats that you mentioned, the Côte-Nord, the Gaspé, Joliette, if Véronique Yvon stays, they will win Joliette. And so will they get past 5.5, so at least 6? It's going to be close, but to be different with you, I will take the over on this. And I'll add something. I think the leader of the Parti Québécois will try a very ballsy move and go into Taschereau in Quebec City to try to unseat Catherine Dorion of Quebec Solidaire. So I will add a cherry on top of that prediction. So I say over.
Okay, great. I did have a PQ one. I don't want this to, just as a quick one. 1.5 seats for the PQ, south and east of Quebec City. Sorry, south and west. South and west.
South and
of
west.
Quebec City. Yeah. Can they win you said Véronique Yvon, she
Yeah.
could win Joliette. Could they even win a second seat outside of, the Gaspé and the Côte-Nord and the Saguenay?
That's a very good one. I like these ones. I think they'll win Joliette if Véronique Yvon stays, which is she hasn't announced yet, and she could very well do something else with her life if she decided to. So Joliette would be one. I don't think they'll win Marie-Victorin. They're out of Montreal. Townships, Outaouais, Trois-Rivières. No, I'll say the under. I'll say they only win one.
Okay, I have to also take the under. If I just took the under with the 5.5, I can't see them winning, so that wouldn't be consistent. Okay, so let's do one for the CAQ now.
Okay.
So I've got 3.5 seats for the CAQ on the island of Montreal.
Over right away. No hesitation for me. I like to say, I think this, I think that, maybe, perhaps. Oh, I'll go with no, over right away. They have 2 seats in Montreal right now on the island of Montreal. For those listening who don't know, Montreal has 27 provincial seats. The CAQ won 2, including one very close one last election. I think they will win as much as 5 or 6 on the island of Montreal. Verdun, Anjou, Maurice Richard. They'll be competitive in Marquette. So an easy over for me.
Okay. All right. I thought I was being, I didn't.
Did you say 3.5?
I did.
Is that 3.5? Okay.
Yeah.
It's an easy line for me. I'll say the over.
Okay.
What do you say? Do you think under?
Well, I think they pick up at least a third. But I wonder if they hit a limit, that the Francophone vote on the island of Montreal is too progressive to go to the CAQ, and maybe the Liberals, the fact that they're going to the left, maybe it helps them too. Maybe it splits it too much. I don't know. But now I feel like my line was too low, so I don't know if I want to take the under. But,
okay, so let's there's only 2 of us in this game, so we can do whatever we want. Let's move the line to 4.5. How you feel now?
There, I would be a bit more comfortable with the under. I think making a huge breakthrough in the island of Montreal is going to be tough. I don't think winning a few extra seats is out of the realms of I think they will, but yeah, I don't know if they're going to do as well as maybe they could. So if it is 4.5, let's move it up to 4.5. I'm going to take the under, and
I'll still take the over. That will be a fun one because there's some very close races, and it depends also where the Parti Québécois vote goes, because I've seen. On the island of Montreal, I've seen single digits for the PQ, and those votes are not going to the Liberals. Perhaps some of it will be absorbed by Quebec Solidaire, although Quebec Solidaire, they talk a big game, but they haven't grown their support since the election. So we'll see, but I'll take the over. This is 4.5. This is a good line. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. All right. What do you got next?
Let's go with the CAQ. We have to talk about them. They're going to form government for the next decade anyway. So.
Over under on how many decades? Yeah.
Well, that could be a fun one. A over under on the number of elections they win in a row. No, that's all right. So I had projections that go as high as 100 seats for the CAQ, but everything would have to go right for them, and everything would have to go wrong for the opposition parties, which could happen. But I think that if I put the line at 100 seats, it would be an easy under for both of us. So I'll try to make it harder. Even 90 seats is really hard to get. Jean Charest didn't do it. The PQ government never did it. So I'll put the line of the CAQ seats at 93.5, which I think makes it a bit harder. 93.5 seats for the CAQ out of 125, of course, in the National Assembly. What do you think?
I think for that one, I will take the under. I do, I see the polls. I see the fact that the CQ has 50+% support among Francophones, and that they're not even doing that poorly among non-Francophones. So, it helps them in some areas. But I feel like a campaign will have things tighten a little bit, and that the CQ is going to make gains, but it won't be as big of a win as we think. Maybe the debate doesn't go that well. Who knows? I can see them getting 87, 88, that kind of thing. But I'm going to, for 93.5, I will take the under.
That's interesting. Okay, so I didn't put it low enough. But okay, let's say they win 90 seats. That means the other parties win 35, if my math is correct. How do you get the Liberals, Quebec Solidaire, and PQ at 35 together? I mean, the Liberals would have to, to outperform. They would have to go back to the ballot box bonus that the Liberals always had, but there's no referendum. There's no threat of separation. So 93.5, I will go over. I say the CEQ does over. They have an amazing machine that is unrivaled in Quebec, the Get Out the Vote machine. They have the best organization. And even with everything that's happened in the past year and a half, nobody has been able to crack that foundation. Dominique Andelade, it's not working. Paul Saint-Clair-Pamadon could be working, but we're still talking about a handful of seats. And Quebec Solidaire, again, they talk a big game, but outside of the urban centers, I don't see them growing. So I will take the over 19.5 for the CAQ.
All right. Okay. Here, let me do. Based on what you said, I think I know what you would say to some of these, but I'm going to do this one for the Liberals. They are the official opposition. Right. Let's give and they are second in the polls. So I'm going to put the over under at 19.5 seats.
Oh, that's a tough one.
And they haven't been below 20 since 1948. So it has been, they have a solid base. It's that non-Francophone vote in some other parts of the province. I know that your latest projection has them somewhere south of 20, but not by much. And their ceiling is a lot higher.
Yeah, that's true.
So what do you think? Do they end up below 20 and really have an awful result for them?
19.5. That's a good line. My goodness, it's not an easy line. Okay, so they will at least lose half of Laval. They could lose 5 or 6 in Laval. They will have Pontiac. The western half of Montreal. Brossard, since Dr. Barrette is leaving, he's not really appreciated by the Quebec electorate. He's leaving, so right there they have a few bonus points. 19.5. I really want to say the under, but I don't think I can. It's too good a line. I will say a slight over, and I know a slight over, a big over in this game doesn't matter. I will say a slight over for the Liberals. What do you think?
I will also take the over. I thought maybe I would trap you because of some of your recent
You almost did. You almost did.
But I think that when there's a campaign on, I think that a lot of that Anglophone vote, like right now they're at like 57% or something. I think they'll end up back at 70. And so some of those seats on the island that maybe are on the bubble, those ones that are maybe 50-50 Anglo and Francophone, maybe they can win those a lot easier than we think. And so they end up, somewhere in the low 20s. But I unless they somehow, something happens, it seems hard for them to get anywhere beyond that. But
I'll say this: the shy Liberal vote that we talked about for all the 90s and 80s and the early 2000s, due to the referendum effect, the fact that there were some Quebecers that were nationalist but Federalist also, they were afraid to tell the pollsters that they voted Liberals. This could come back at some point because there are a lot of Quebecers that are against Bill 21, for instance. I don't want to get into this, but there are a lot of Quebecers that are against Bill 21. Will they go to the Liberals? It's possible, and perhaps they're missing a point or two. And what you said about the non-Francophone vote, well, right now, the latest Léger had the CAQ dominating the Francophone vote more by a greater margin than the Liberals dominating the non-Francophone vote, which is completely unheard of. So that's why I'm going over. But it still should be a disastrous result for the Liberals. So let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, in 2018, I think one of the reasons they underperformed the polls was in part that the turnout in the predominantly Anglophone parts of the province was lower. So it just meant that their vote. But I feel like in this election that it might be easier for Anglophones to feel motivated to go out than in 2018. I just think that the dynamics, particularly with the identity issues, maybe it does galvanize Anglophone votes to actually go out. And so while that doesn't maybe win them extra seats, it means maybe they won't underperform their polls as much as they did back in 2018.
If I can add a parenthesis to this, Eric, let's say this will not count. This is an exhibition, but let's say I put the line at 25 seats. Then what would you say?
Then I'd probably take the under. Yeah, I think that the 20 to 25 is where I see them.
Okay, good. All right. That's not what they think. They think they could win the election.
Well, everybody thinks they
understand
can
why.
win an election,
That's true.
at least publicly. Okay, so do you have another one that you really want to use, or do you want to move on to the next?
Well, let's why is not a quick one on Quebec Solidaire. They won 10 seats. They were competitive in exactly 10 of them. They won everywhere they could win. I mean, I've had some arguments with some activist students. I wrote this in my column for McLean's. Activist students for Quebec Solidaire told me Quebec Solidaire is going to be the official opposition. They're going to win 20 to 25 seats. And my answer was like, really? Okay, let's look at the list and tell me where they win. And they drew blanks. They could not identify those wins. So
Philippe, they're children. Why are you doing this to them?
They're not children. They're young adults. I teach in college, my friend. They're young adults. They will vote. They were born in 2003, you know? So,
oh, geez.
Okay. But okay, so it's a quick line. If I say Quebec Solidaire, 8.5 seats. What do you say?
Okay, so I'm going to take us back to 2018. We did a podcast before the election, and I said I had Quebec Solidaire at 10 seats, and you said I was crazy.
Well, I didn't use those words, but yes, I thought that was too high.
You scoffed, and I feel like during a campaign, there's a good chance that the francophone vote for the Liberals completely tanks. The PQ doesn't do that well, and Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois, perhaps he has a really good debate, something like that, and people say, let's get behind them, and so they end up doing pretty well, and they win 12, 13 seats. I know it's hard to find them, but I mean, Ray Naranda was hard to find in 2018. That's and they true. Managed that.
But you did, not only did you say 10, but you identified Ray Naranda back then. I was really impressed.
Yes, thank you. So anyway, I would take the over. I would take the over in 8.5. I'll take the under.
I say they lose one in Quebec City, they'll lose Ray Naranda, and they won't win anything else. So that's 8. But again, Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois could be very good in the debate. I would not be surprised if he's really good in the debate. I know he irritates Premier Legault very much, and it shows in the body language. So it's possible. It's not a crazy suggestion, but I'll still take the under.
Okay. And I know that we said this is a boring election because but I find there's still lots. So I do want to use one more.
Okay.
The Conservatives, 4.5%. Over under on that.
Éric Duhame's Conservative Party, 4.5%. What did Maxime Bernier do in Quebec? Was it 2.5?
It wasn't good. Yeah.
It wasn't good. Yeah.
It was the worst of all the provinces.
Yeah. Éric Duhame is a much more effective communicator than Maxime Bernier. He has a strong following in Quebec City and in Chaudière-Appalaches, Lévis, in that area. They listen to Radio X. They're pro-Trump and everything. Anti-vaxxers. It's a good line. I'm tempted to say, I'll say over. I think 5% is a reasonable outcome for them. What do you say?
I think I would have taken the over. Because it seems like for people on that side, it might be a very low stakes kind of thing. If everyone thinks the CQ is going to win, then there won't be. There does seem to have been a little bit of a bleed of the PPC vote to the Conservatives in the end of the campaign. Not a huge one, but a little one. So I don't think that dynamic's going to play out. But I think that maybe that vote is a lot smaller in Quebec. So I'm going to take the under. But I think that they could still get pretty close to that. And hey, maybe that is what saves Quebec Solidaire in Quebec City. So there you go.
It's a good line. 4.5 is a good line. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to provincial politics outside of the ones that are holding elections, or at least scheduled to hold elections. So I will start with going to Alberta.
Ahead. Okay.
Kenney's leadership review, which is going to be taking place on April 9th. What does he get? I'm going to set the bar at 76.5. Now I'm setting it at 76.5 for a reason. The number for conservative leaders in Alberta is generally around 77. That's what Alison Redford got. It's what Ed Stelmach got. And both of them only kind of limped along for a little while after that and then had to resign. So I'm going to put the bar at 76.5 for Jason Kenney. He's holding the event in Red Deer. You got to travel there. There's a fee. You got to be in person. You got to be really determined to go out to vote. So what do you think?
It's a delegated convention. You have to be there. Oh, that's
It's in
interesting.
person. Yeah, it's not online.
Really, really.
Gotta plunk down $100.
I mean, his numbers have not gotten any better. Brian Jean just won the nomination for Fort McMurray. So it's very tempting. I'm sorry to say the under. Yeah, I'll take the under. I'll take the under. I think Kenney's in trouble. I don't think the UCP or the Conservative movement is in trouble necessarily. We'll talk about this later if you want, but I'll take the under. What about you?
I'll take the over. I think that he'll be able to make sure that his people get out there. They had their AGM recently and it didn't go as badly for him as people thought it could. So he knows how to fill a room with his supporters. But if he ends up with 79, 80, I'm not sure if that means his problems are over. But I'm going to say that he takes the over and tries to hold on for as long as he possibly can.
That's Alberta has gotten so much interesting over the past few years, right? I mean, I know they had the 45 years dynasty, 44 years, I think it was.
Yeah.
So of course that's kind of boring year after year to have always the same party and easy to win elections. But the rural urban split in Alberta is so interesting. The projections that I have right now, and I'm sure you concur because I follow the data, but has the NDP as overwhelmingly favorite. But my feeling is that it's going to be close. I mean, I don't see the Conservatives earning like 30% of the vote like we've seen some polls show. I just think that many Conservatives are very disappointed with the UCP, and so they don't answer polls. But it's funny because I know the answer. I had a over under. How many provincial elections in Canada in 2022? We know there's going to be Ontario and Quebec unless there's a revolution, maybe a coup. I set the line at 2.5 because I figured, you know what? If there were rumors that Kenney could, say, all right, we'll go into an election instead of me losing the leadership. I know it's too much. This hypothesis is too much fun to be actually true. It won't happen because it would be too much fun. But 2.5 provincial elections this year in Canada. What say you?
I'll take the under.
Yeah, me too.
I have a hard time seeing any of the other ones because there are no minority governments, I don't think, right now.
PI, but it's not.
No, PI is now a majority. They won it in a.
Oh, it's true.
They got an extra seat in the by-election, but so I don't see any of them having. I mean, the one thing could happen, and this is only. I think it's only in Newfoundland and Labrador, but it might be elsewhere. And let's just say it would be a horrible thing. But if Andrew Furey, something happened and he passed away, something like that, Newfoundland does require that a new premier is named within 6 months, or that an election is held within 6 months of a new premier.
Right.
So that could be a possibility, but that's just an awful thing that I don't want to think about. And I don't know if any other province has that. I think they might be the only one. So if it had been more, you can say, well, one of them might have a health scare and resign, and there could be something, but I don't see where the third one would be.
And Manitoba is 2023.
I suppose one of them could go early. That's actually a good point, right? Because Pallister did go early in 2019. Yeah. So that's a possibility too. I hadn't thought about that.
The polls played in his favor in 2019, and the polls do not seem to be favoring the Manitoba PC right now. So but the only option really, I thought maybe if Kenney feels like he could lose the leadership, he say, I'm going to take the nuclear option and go into an election. But it would be so much fun. But anyway, all right, I'll take the under too.
Okay, all right. Well, here, I'll do one more on this one, unless you have one that you'd like to do. But I have 1.5 provincial premiers who will resign or be defeated by the end of the year, by the next time we record this, if we record this in a year's time. So 1.5.
Wow. Resign or be defeated.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good one. The Atlantic Canada seems to be set unless there's a big event that can be unforeseen. Legault's going to win. I mean, to reach 2, you need 4 to lose and then a resignation. And I don't think Ford will lose. So that's a good one. I will have to go Pallister's gone. Mo's not going anywhere. Horgan is a majority. We're not talking territories here, right?
No, yeah, provincial premiers. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a good line. I will go with the under, but if Ford loses and you have one resignation, it's not that far-fetched, but I will go with the under.
Okay, I'll take the over just to play the odds that one of the other 9 premiers will resign for personal reasons or wants to retire, that kind of thing. Blaine Higgs is not that popular right now. He's not a particularly young man. There's some other premiers like that. Horgan recently had surgery related to cancer. So, there's always those kinds of things. Again, not nice things to think about, but if we're just playing the odds, I'll take the over, but it does actually require that probably Ford would be defeated, which I don't think is going to happen, but let's do it just for fun. All right. Do you have another one? Do you want to move on to federal?
Let's move on to federal.
Okay, you go first.
I have a good one. Well, I have an easy one, but I think it's a fun one to talk about. It's like the over under, true, false, and why. True or false and why. A year from now, Erin O'Toole is still the leader of the Conservative Party. True or false and why?
I'm going to say true. I think that there's a lot of passive inertia or momentum, or the opposite of momentum when you're the incumbent. And I feel that while he does have a lot of things going badly for him, and it feels like more than Andrew Scheer, it does feel though that he is also he's fighting harder than Scheer did. And he does seem to have allies within the party that want him to go to stay, which I don't think Andrew Scheer had. I think the Quebec wing wants him to stay. The more moderate wing wants him to stay. So I think that he can hang on. There's a leadership review in 2023, and maybe that causes problems, but I think he hangs on for the year. Though I'm not saying it's 80-20, maybe I'm saying 60-40, but I think he stays. I think so I'll say true if it was he's still the leader. True.
Well, it's strange to look back at the dates, but Andrew Scheer did resign very quickly. It was I think it was early December that he left.
Yeah, it was around
the election
now.
So that's when you look at it felt like it was longer. So Erin O'Toole has already lasted longer than Andrew Scheer post-election. I think he should stay because I don't think this election was lost because of him. But that's not the mandate here. I'm tempted to say true, but let's say that the Liberals poll very well. I mean, we saw the Angus Reid Institute of all polling firms had the Liberals with a 6-point lead and the Conservatives below 30%. If they keep getting those awful poll numbers, the Conservatives, and there seems to be no window for victory in a short term, he could get a lot of resistance, and at some point he could just say, screw that, I'm out. But he seems to have a lot of fight in him. I agree with you. The answer here is I do not know. I could see both scenarios unfold, but I'll do as you did earlier, just for the sake of competition here. I will say no. Next year at this date, he will not be the Conservative leader, although I'm not sure who that would be. I've seen some very serious people suggest that Leslyn Lewis should become the Conservative leader, which is surprising. I'm not saying that she's incompetent or anything, but she's a unilingual social conservative. And so if you want to hand Justin Trudeau the next election on a silver platter, that would be the great recipe. So I'll say false. It won't be the Conservative leader.
All right. And who is that? Is that Shiva or is that Vishnu?
This is Shiva, who's very curious because I haven't petted her in more than an hour. So this is my Russian blue. She is the one she's the reason I went out of the pandemic teaching online with my sanity. So hello, nice. Shiva.
All right. Hi, Shiva. Okay. So you did one for the Conservatives, so I'll do one for the Liberals. Maybe this one seems too easy. I don't know, but I'm going to put the best poll for the Liberals in 2022. And I'm going to put the bar at 39.5.
You come up with those great lines today. So will the Liberals have at least one serious poll at 40 or above? Right? Well, there's always innovative research. the very best poll, not the poll average, the best poll.
Yeah, let's
I'll
do
say
the
over.
best poll.
Yeah, I'll say over 39.5. There's going to be at least one innovative research poll that will have them at 40 at some point. It's not that high a bar. I mean, they reached 40 in 2020. In 2021, I'll say.
Okay, all right then. The polling average, with the one that you maintain, and you have to do it. You have to do it honestly.
I'll just manipulate 1 week. I'll manipulate to go over. Okay.
And now I'll put the bar at 40. At 40.
40. Okay.
Since we're at the decimal points with the averages.
Right. Will the polling average for the Liberals go beyond 40? That's a high bar. I will go under. I will go under for that. Unless there's a collapse somewhere and magically the pandemic disappears and they have a balanced budget. That's not going to happen. So I'll go under. What do you think?
I'll take the over just for fun. But like, you know, who knows what happens? Maybe something happens with the Conservatives and their vote collapses. Maybe Trudeau decides he's going to resign and they name a new leader who gets a honeymoon. Who knows? Something like that. So I'll take the over. True. But, you know, if they get over 40.3 or something, that would be surprising. But I'll take the over just for fun.
We would have an election then. I mean, they would.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? That's good.
All right. Do you got another one?
Okay. So since you said that the hang on here. No, okay. Federal one. Number of by-elections, federal by-elections in 2022. And I'll put the line very low at 1.5.
Did we have any last year? I don't think we did, eh?
We had an Amy Paul, or was it to 2020?
That was in 2020. I think we didn't have one in all of 2021. Boy, so that requires someone to resign probably within the next 6 months, right? For the election to actually be held in this coming year.
Right. I think. No, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take the under. I can imagine that there'll be something happens where one person resigns and then a by-election is held. But, you know, I don't see that anybody's going to be resigning to run for provincial leadership or anything like that. It still seems very close to the election to have people resign. So I will take the under, and I'm assuming it'll be like one, but yeah.
It's also, I think there are a few words during minority parliaments because, you know, they want to keep their jobs and they don't know. So I'll take the over. I think Marc Garneau could be gone. That's one. And then you only need one other to leave. And so, again, I don't think I can predict the future here, but just for the sake of it, the line is at 1.5. I'll say over number of by-elections. So we'll see. And I think it's Westmount NDG for Marc Garneau. That's a really good Liberal seat. So that would be an opportunity for the Liberals to recruit somebody of quality. So we'll see what they do with it. It's a very.
Does Mark Carney does he have a condo in Westmount? Maybe. Okay,
he could. I'm sure he could afford one.
Okay. Let me see another one. How about this one? So now that the People's Party reached at least 2% of the vote, they will now have to report quarterly on their fundraising. So I'm putting the line of how many quarters will they raise $1 million? And I'm putting the line at 0.5.
Wait, 1 million in 1 quarter?
Yeah. The Greens do it. The Bloc does it. It's just one province.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, if you took their past fundraising and their annual ones before the election, we don't have the ones from last year. If you averaged it out, you kind of look at it, they never reached 1 million in a quarter, at least, you know, with those kinds of assumptions. Maybe they did it, but we don't know. But yeah.
Okay. The thing with the People's Party, and this is, of course, a personal impression of mine, if you allow me, and I'm sure your readers perhaps will pull their hair out hearing me say this, but I do not think they're a real political party. I think they're more of a business model for Maxime Bernier. It was very public that he pays himself a 6-figure salary with political donations that he receives. It's entirely legal. He has the right to do this. But they had almost 1 million vote in this election and were not competitive in any seat. That tells you that how bad they are at strategy. They did not focus on a handful of seats like they should have. They, so I'll say under. They're doing well, better in the polls, but I don't think they're a very serious movement, and I don't think they're well organized enough as the Bloc or the Greens to pull $1 million in 3 months. So I'll say, you said 0.5, I'll say the under. I say they don't do it.
Then I'll take the over, mostly just to be different, but also, building off what you just said, if they are trying to be a going concern, that means that fundraising is probably going to be the thing that they're going to be paying attention to more than electoral strategy. So if that's the case, and we know how successful people on the right wing can be in terms of raising money, so I can see it happening, that they manage it in 1 quarter, that they get over $1 million. It will be really interesting to see how they're going to compare. You look at the Green Party, they're doing so poorly, but they can still manage to get $1 million raised in a quarter. And now they're looking at getting rid of their national office because they can't afford it. Maybe Maxime Bernier's YouTube channel that he has, he can gum up the money for that. So I'll take the over on it.
That's interesting. It could happen. You could be right. I'm not. It's not a slam dunk for me. But all right. That's a very good one.
Have you already done 2 or?
Yeah, I think I'm done here. Yeah.
Okay. Here, wait. I'll just do this one for fun.
Okay.
Federal elections, 0.5.
You would need to have a high definition video of a minister with a briefcase full of cash to have an election this year, unless something completely dramatic. And I mean, worse than SNC-Lavalin in 2019 for it to be an election. I think nobody wants to go into an election. And so unless there's a major scandal, that's not happening. And so I will say very clear and definite under for me. And I'm not even sure for 2023. This could be a long minority, although I don't want to go further than this, but I will say under.
Okay, I'll do also under. I feel like the Liberals would be tempting fate to do an early election again, and I don't see the opposition parties, all 3 of them, getting behind it.
And you see that this is an honest, for me, this is an honest prediction for me, because I would love it to be an election. I mean, I'm doing well during elections. I was on TV all the time, and I did, so it was fun. But, and also the timing of it, when would we put it? I mean, you couldn't put it this spring during Ontario, in the fall during Quebec election, no way. So I say under, although, if there were one, I'd be happy.
All right, so that'll be it for the political side. Now, I just did want to do one non-political over-under question. I'll go first. I don't know what you have, but I'll go first. So, as you know, and I know you're a hockey fan too, there'll be the Winter Olympics. I am very curious about whether the NHLers will actually get to go. There does seem to be more and more indications that it'll be problematic. There's quarantine rules, the fact that there's delays. Just this week, the Calgary Flames had some games delayed. But if the NHLers do go, Canada is in the same group as the Chinese national team. The Chinese national team is ranked 32nd in the world, which is very, very low. And I don't think that Canada has ever played a team that is ranked that low. So my over-under is the margin of victory between Canada and China during the Winter Olympics. And I'm putting the bar at 9.5.
Oh, that's ass. There's a mercy rule at some point that
goal differential will make a difference in terms of placement. So there's an incentive there to run up the numbers.
Right. This is if NHLers go, or regardless?
Regardless.
I think it's regardless. I mean, you said 32nd in the world. Hockey is a very niche sport in the world. I think there's like 8 or 9 nations that play it seriously. And when you go to the 10 or 12, it really falls off a cliff, right? So 32nd is really bad. They could play shorthanded the whole game and still win. I mean, Connor McDavid could.
Well,
They're
he
not gonna
can
touch him.
he can beat 5 players on the ice. We've seen that before. So
Yeah, and the initial defenseman. So 9.5 seems low, Eric. It's going to be far more than this. It's just that at some point you don't want to humiliate the host. So perhaps they'll just pass the puck around like in 3-on-3 in overtime when they go back into their zone. And so I have to say over. It's just, will the Chinese score a single goal? Against an NHL goalie? No, of course not. So I'll go over. I'll go over.
So the thing is, I think I'm going to end up taking the under, and I'll tell you why. And I know it's surprising. If the NHLers do go, and the Chinese national team is the one that they've sent to tournaments in recent years, then I think that it could be a 30-0 game. I think that's possible. Yeah. But the Chinese have a lot of expats on their team, lots of former Canadians and Americans, and some of them have actually played in the NHL. So if they are allowed to bring those players in, then maybe it won't be as embarrassing. A lot of those players play for the Chinese team that's based in the KHL. And right. If the NHLers don't go, then the Canadian team's not going to be a stellar team. It's going to be made out of European League players. So I'm going to take the under in assuming that maybe the NHLers don't go to the Olympics and the Chinese team is allowed to ice a team that's largely Canadian and American. And so the score is 9-0, but I'll take the under just for fun.
That's a very good point. I'm going to get up at night. Whenever that game is, I know Nagano was 3 a.m. So I'm not sure what time they'll put the games on, but I'm going to have to get up to watch that game. Just to see the contrast, because I mean the absolute best team in the NHL versus the absolute worst team in the NHL, the odds are 2-1. So it's always close. But against, my God, it's going to be interesting. It's funny that the non-political one for me was also about hockey. Big surprise here. Yeah, the number of Montreal Canadiens playoff wins. No, I'm kidding. That's 0. True, false, or and why will the Maple Leafs go to the second round?
Oh, wow. Okay. They've been playing pretty well. They seem to be doing okay. I mean, they are the Leafs, but as you can imagine, neither of us are Maple Leaf fans. Anyway, I grew up watching the Senators. I also watch the Canadiens. So those are the teams that I follow. But you know what? I'm going to say that they end up getting a good opponent in the first round. They win. There's a parade in Toronto, and then they get swept in the second round. This is going to be my guess.
Well, that would be progress for a Leafs fan listening to us right now. I seem to remember a 7-game series last year. How did it? Okay. I will say the under. They probably will play Tampa Bay in the first round, and Leafs will lose in Tampa Bay against Tampa Bay, and all of Canada except Leafs fan will watch it because it's going to be so much fun. So there you go.
Okay. And just to end it more on hockey content, who is the team that will get furthest in the playoffs in just a few months, I guess it is, from Canada?
Well, Calgary is doing really well. Edmonton has the Stars. Toronto has the tougher path. Toronto has to go through, if Boston makes the playoff, they have to go through the Lightning and the Tampa Bay the Florida Panthers that are doing really well this year. It's the Jets. No, I will go. I want to go with the Oilers, but geez, the Oilers are they're like the Leafs West, right? Just for fun, I'll say the Flames. But I don't know. I stopped following hockey after when the Habs lost their first 15 games of the season or something.
You have to have faith. I'll take the Oilers just because they're fun to watch. It'd be fun to see them, and I'd like to root for them to go all the way. So there you go. All right. So any big predictions for 2022? Do you think we're going to have a better year than we did this year?
I think so. The latest reports on the Omicron variant show that the booster, the third vaccine, is really effective against it. So this is good news. Of course, there could be other variants, and if we don't vaccinate the poor third world countries, it's just going to go on and go on and go on. But I'm an optimist. I think it's going to get better, and hopefully it gets better for a lot of people. outside of this country, because in Canada we've been very fortunate, and I don't take this for granted. So yeah, thank you, Eric. Merci, mon ami, to have me on today. Really appreciate this. I hope we don't make fools of ourselves next year when we check on those predictions. But this has been very fun, and looking forward to keep reading your post on the Writ.ca.
Thanks very much, Philippe. And you brought up a good thing. We should be appreciative of all the good fortune that we have, and the holidays is a terrific time to spend some time being thankful for all that, spending time with your family, and being appreciative of the time that you have with them. So Philippe, I hope you have lots of great time over the holidays, and that in 2022 your predictions are good, but not as good as the ones that I just made on the podcast.
Merci, Eric, my friend. Take care.
All right, bye.